Welcome back to this video series in which I list and describe the 35 conditions one must meet in order to be my long-term lady friend, partner, potential wife, whoever I'm going to stick it out to the end with. If you haven't watched part one, I give a little introduction to this in part one. Go check that out. This I want to emphasize is a combination of the subjective and the objective. All of these things, all 35 of them, are subjective things, preferences for me that I have in a potential partner. But there is some underlying objectivity to a lot of them. There's some red pill awareness in a lot of these points that maybe you can learn something from or reflect on and incorporate into your list of conditions that you'd like to see in an ideal partner. I do have a fair amount of experience with dating, with sex, with romantic situations of all kinds regarding the opposite sex, and constantly improving myself and making myself the priority. And I want to emphasize that as well. And it's not that I'm actively searching for this person that meets all these conditions. It's that I'm, focusing on myself, making myself better all the time. And if this person comes along, then great. If not, I fortunately am gaining my fulfillment through my own endeavors. This person could potentially complement my life, and that would be lovely. But being that I have no solid plans for family, children, things like that, have to lay the groundwork for myself and be comfortable with myself before going out and fucking up someone else's life, right? Anyway, without further ado, these are conditions 6 to 10 of 35. 6, intellect versus emotion. I mentioned in the last video that I tend toward dating more liberal women because they tend to be more intellectually open, more creative, good conversationalists who are interested in ideas and exploring avenues of the psyche as well, and philosophy, etc., all of the things that I'm interested in. You find more women who are interested in those things on the left side of the political spectrum than on the right side. But with a smart woman who is intellectually inclined, there are often problems. You see, I didn't mention this in the last video, but I think it's a good general rule that a liberal woman is more interested in what you have to say, but a conservative woman is more accepting of what you say if they don't believe the same thing that you believe, right? So I've found that in my experience with mostly liberal women, regardless of how smart they are still a slave to their female biology, to their hormones. They still have mood swings. They're still a woman, essentially, even if they don't look like it. All my exes did look like it. Don't worry, I don't date bull dykes. I like someone who is confident, who is smart, who has a rational side, but there is risk in this. That rational side can manifest through the ego, and it can be used to justify certain mood swings and cover up the self-awareness that is necessary to allow one's emotions to manifest in the world that is not harmful to others. So I guess, sorry, I'm being a little jumbled up, but basically being emotional and being emotionally mature are not the same thing, right? Being emotionally mature involves being aware of your emotions and being in control of managing them so that they don't negatively affect other people. And when you realize in hindsight that they have affected other people, that the woman is willing to apologize for that in the appropriate manner. Now, I know this may seem a little rigid, just let people be as they are, but as a particularly unempathetic and non-emotional and borderline sociopathic person, I do need someone who is somewhat similar to me in that way, at least complementary to me in that way. I am in very good control over my emotions, and I don't let the rare cases in which they do manifest affect others in a negative way. I'd like to see that same maturity and respect in my partner, because an overly emotional scenario is overbearing for me because it simply doesn't make sense. So I want to see a balance of intellect and emotion. I want someone who has a rational side but does not let their ego get the best of them and use their rationality to justify their emotional states without apologizing for them or without controlling them in an appropriate manner. Anyway, number 7, sexually open, creative, and submissive. Now, I am a man. I am dominant in the bedroom and in other ways, other aspects of my life. I want someone who compliments me, not someone who is going to challenge me for dominance. I have found in my experience that I am much more attracted to and much more turned on by a woman who submits to me rather than who fights me. I have had, don't get me wrong, some fun interactions with, fucking a little bit of fighting. Like, it's fine. And there can be a balance occasionally, but in general, I want someone who is more submissive. As far as being creative and open goes, I want someone who is cat-like, who moves like a cat, moves in a sexy way, who is open and creative about turning me on and getting me off. And of course, this goes both ways. I enjoy turning a woman on and getting her off, so I want her to be open to whatever creativity I might bring to the table in that regard, in order to do that. And another point on this, being sexually open, it's mainly an issue of openness and submission. Someone who is not stubborn when it comes to orgasming, someone who is not overly difficult to make orgasm. I have found, at least in my experience, and I'm sure that there are exceptions to this rule, that someone who is difficult to make orgasm has either an ego or dominance problem and is unwilling to be submissive. And that can be their preference, and that just means maybe that we're not compatible sexually. Or it can mean that they are insecure and not comfortable with themselves sexually and have a guard up for some reason. Either way, for me, it's a red flag, either way. And that has been my experience. Your preferences are your preferences, mine are mine. But that's what I like. Someone who can let go, can submit, but also doesn't fucking starfish. Also put some work in herself. There has to be a balance, and that's fun. I just, I like to pleasure my woman. I don't like to leave business unfinished, if you know what I mean. Number 8, monogamous. General point on polyamory and open relationships. Again, this is one of those things that I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, but I haven't met anyone yet who tended away from monogamy, at least consciously, who was not psychologically disturbed in one way or another. They've all had problems, and they all live in utter chaos, at least from what I've seen. And I think in the cases where someone finds another person who is genuinely, at least genuinely thinks that they are polyamorous or should be in an open relationship as well, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily what they want, because I don't think it's in a woman's best interest to be polyamorous or to have multiple partners. It's not the safest and smartest way to go about sexual interaction, family, etc. You have to take conscious control over that. But when you do find someone, if you do identify that way, and you do find someone who says they want the same thing, it's not because that's what they actually want. It's because they simply share some of the same psychological issues that person has, or that you have. So I'm just not psychologically disturbed, apart from the fact that I am a borderline sociopath, but I know how to manage that. It's not a huge problem for me. And I prefer someone who is monogamous. But this also has to do with it's deeper than simply how you act, right? I am open to sharing fantasies with my partner, whether or not they're realistic. And this, relates to being sexually open in number 7. But there is a line to be drawn between what your thoughts and fantasies are and what you can and should act out in real life. And so someone who knows the difference there, that shows a level of sexual and emotional maturity that, more generally speaking, I do look for in a partner. Someone who can keep the thoughts and actions separate when need be. Number 9, this is totally subjective, just something I'm into. I'm kind of into erotic photography. I haven't actually done any of it, but and it's not a huge pressing issue for me. But this is also related to being sexually open and creative, because I see erotic photography as a sort of art form, and I like people who like art, and I like people who are sexually open. Therefore, why not have 2 sets of wedding photos if it comes down to that? And it's not something you have to start at the beginning of a relationship. Maybe you don't, the person proves to be untrustworthy and those photos end up getting out and it's weird. Although I probably wouldn't mind. But having 2 sets of wedding photos, one in the tux and the bridal gown for grandma and grandpa and most people of a conventional leaning, and then another one for the more adventurous, kind of do a sexy photo shoot in lingerie or maybe even fully nude, depending on what we agree to. I don't know. It's personal preference, something I like the idea of. Not a hard-pressing issue, but I think that if all the other conditions are in order, then this person, hypothetically, would probably be cool with some erotic photos, at least for the wedding photo shoot. Number 10, proportionality in the female body. Look, I don't think it's asking too much, because, look, I am #blessed with a proportional, fit-looking body that I didn't have to work very hard for. Call it good genes, call it what you want, but I would like someone who is equal to me or better in that manner, and I think that's somewhat fair. I'm talking good hip to waist ratio with a nice butt. Breasts can be any size as long as they're well-shaped and proportional. Preferentially, I don't care for huge areolas and weirdly shaped nipples, but I'm not too picky, if they're a nice shape and everything. Do like them on the smaller side, but I do like when a woman is turned on by a little bit of nipple play, Anyway, that's preference. But I like someone who is proportional. Also, another thing I've been open to lately, I was with a woman recently, implants are totally welcome. It's not like tattoos. I talked about tattoos in the last video, how I'm kind of on the fence about it. I mean, I prefer no tattoos. They just have to be well placed and, discreet in most cases. But I'm open to that and aesthetically pleasing, But whereas tattoos fade over time and don't look so good as your skin starts to sag and you age, implants are the opposite. It's something that's more sustainable over time. They fight the forces of gravity, whereas natural boobs tend to sag just like tattoos as you age. So definitely open to that. But I like good proportionality in the female body. Might sound like a bit much, like I'm being superficial or something, but I'm a man. I am visually oriented when it comes to attractiveness, and I want someone who is at least as attractive as I am, especially being that I'll, as a man, probably put more emphasis on physical attraction than the woman will in general. So those are conditions 6 to 10 of 35 that one must meet in order to be my long-term partner. Again, hypothetical, I am perfectly happy with dying alone if this person does not come along. That's okay. Stay tuned for part 3, 11 to 15. It's going to get more subjective and a little more fun too. Cheers.